Let's talk about YouTube marketing. Now, if you're a friend of mine, God forbid, you've heard me talk about this all the time lately. And you've probably had heated debates with me about it on a regular basis lately. Specifically, if your name is Neon Manta, who I don't feel bad about calling out because we've had this debate even on a podcast, derailing the entire intro of it for like 15 minutes as we heatedly were at each other's throats about how me pivoting away from Anitube is actually not a bad idea. And you know what? I need to win the debate. I'm tired of having it. I need to lay out all my facts and logic in a video that I can link to them anytime they're about to bring up one of their shit points. Now, that's mostly a joke. The actual reason is, A, I think it'll be useful to people listening to hear my thought process about these things, and 2, it'll be useful to myself, which is more important than the first point because I am not a big boy YouTuber who you should really be listening to for advice. Listen to like Matt Pat about YouTube stuff. He's done plenty of talks about it. But nonetheless, I think it's useful for me to phrase my own arguments in a way that, I have to lay out all the points, all the groundwork, right? I think that'll be useful to myself in order to just have a better understanding of my own beliefs and maybe, go from here and 6 months from now, maybe I'll have entirely different thoughts about the subject. But for now, here's my theory. Now, if you don't know, I used to be a pure Anituber / light novel tuber, and Zadagoto is also dubiously a light novel, but Niziuizen also doesn't reject the label, so it's kind of semantics there, but generally speaking, an Anituber. And in the past 3 months, I have made sort of a soft pivot that's about to become a hard pivot, where I spent 6 months, actually I think 7 months, on a video about Neon Neko Sugar Girls, which is an MS Paint anime, animated in Flash, actually, and it's part of a genre called fanime, right? It's a huge documentary about the origins of Neon Neko Sugar Girls, and all that good shit. It is not anywhere close to my typical style of content. Now, for people in my Discord server, this is fucking 9/11, because they subbed to me for anime, and I am openly saying I do not intend on covering seasonal anime, or really anime as a whole, anymore, at least for the foreseeable future. Now, I've left the possibility of coming back for an odd video here or there open, because I do still like anime, and would like to make some videos on it. I do have things to say about anime, but I think it is the best decision, both personally and marketing-wise, to pivot away from anime. Now, to understand this, we're first going to have to get into some pretentious marketing terms, right? The concept of the red ocean versus the blue ocean. Now, I don't know shit about marketing as a profession, as a business. I'm just a fucking YouTuber, so I'm probably gonna butcher this concept pretty hard. But here's my understanding of what it is. And the best example for this is Nintendo versus the rest of the gaming industry, rest of the console industry specifically, because Sony and Microsoft make very similar consoles to each other. They've got similar control schemes, and they're competing in the same ocean. And this can be visualized as a red ocean. It is an ocean filled with competition. Now, Nintendo exists more so outside of that audience. So Nintendo fans are much less likely to want to buy a PlayStation or an Xbox. And vice versa, fans of Xbox typically don't buy a Nintendo as well. There is some crossover, but it's much smaller than between Sony and Microsoft and, PlayStation and Xbox. So, you could say that Nintendo exists in a blue ocean. They have created their own demographic by having lower specs consoles with really weird control schemes, and a very specific kind of first-party game experience compared to the PlayStation and the Xbox. And a similar concept can be applied to YouTube videos. So a YouTuber like Summoning Salt exists in a blue ocean, where Summoning Salt invented a genre. He invented the idea of the speedrunning documentary, and everyone else in that genre derives from and is inspired by Summoning Salt. So he exists in his own blue ocean, not necessarily away from the rest of YouTube. Obviously, he is still kind of competing with other gaming channels, but the competition is a lot more sparse where he is. Now, this brings us to seasonal anime. Seasonal anime is a blood red ocean. Anime is now a huge fucking form of media. It is widely popular. You used to get bullied for liking anime. That is no longer the case. It is no longer that people shove you into lockers for liking Naruto. The people who shoved you into lockers 10 years ago now like Naruto. Everyone is into anime, and because of that, Anitube has become massive, and people who were big players in it a decade ago are now either no longer big players, or they're the biggest players who have amassed millions of subs off of it. Obviously, basically the face of Anitube, as far as I can tell, is Giguk. Everyone knows him. He is the Anitube guy. I think there are technically Anitubers with more subs than him, but I could not name them. I feel like I've heard about them before, but fuck me, I can't think of them off the top of my head. The Anime Man, who ironically no longer does Anitube, so that's a very unfortunate channel name right there. But, the big players are well established, and for seasonal anime in particular, competition is fierce, because seasonal anime is the anime that everyone is talking about and watching at any given moment. It is what is most popular, aside from, classics like One Piece and Dragon Ball and all that. Now, the benefit of a red ocean is that the audience is guaranteed, or rather that it's there, so you might not get the audience because you're competing with everyone else, and if other people are doing well, you tend to not be doing as well unless it's a, rising tides, raise all ships kind of thing. But generally speaking, you are competing with a lot of different people. But on the flip side, if you're creating your own market, it might just be a mirage. You might not have a market to create, or it might not have any appeal whatsoever. It's a much bigger gamble to create a blue ocean, and you see this with Nintendo and the Virtual Boy and the Wii U. Complete failures of consoles. The Wii U was such a big failure that Nintendo was the front runner in the next generation of consoles, right? Or basically released two consoles in the same generation as the PS4 and Xbox One, right? They released their new console much quicker than the Xbox Series X and PS5, which came years down the line. So, it is a bigger gamble to create a blue ocean, but on the flip side, you get bigger returns, at least in theory, because you have, no competition, right? You've created this market. But once again, seasonal anime, reddest ocean on the earth. Now, in order to compete with everyone in this ocean, you essentially have to play the game clinically. If you are to do it at maximum possible odds of getting a successful channel out of it, right? So each season, you would let an episode or two air and see what is the most popular show right now. So, for example, was it Winter? Yeah, it would have been Winter. Winter 2024, Dungeon Meshi, right? That was basically one of the biggest shows. It's by Trigger, it's huge, so I made a video on it, and I released it relatively early, and got a fuck ton of views off of it. And Totolini actually got far more views off of it. If you don't know, he's like the person who formed my mindset around marketing on YouTube in a way, where he was, before that, I just thought YouTube was a lottery, and just kept rolling the odds at super low chances. Whereas, Totolini was like, hey, you can increase your odds. You can play it tactically and get videos, not necessarily guaranteed to blow up, but with extremely good odds of finding their audience. And that's what led me to be how I am today. I have him to thank for it, and funnily enough, I now have more subs than him. And I told him to I pinged him on Discord and told him to get fucked. It's not my fault, Totolini. I was peer pressured to do it in VC. It was also funny, so, Now, the problem with playing Anitube like this is that, in my opinion, it sucks all the fun out of it. Because you are not talking about whatever show you are most passionate about. You're just looking at what is popular and deciding, I like that, I guess, or I could get a video out of that. Furthermore, it incentivizes dishonesty. You could not give less of a fuck about the show you're talking about, but if you talk positively about it, you're still going to get views. Like, you have to go with the popular opinion, else people will not like the video. There are a few edge cases, but generally speaking, you have to like it if it's a popular show. Or, if everyone hates it, you have to hate it as well. So, early on, I learned this. I trash-talked Do It Yourself, a not very popular show to begin with, but because it's so niche, me being the only person shit-talking it on YouTube makes it actually a completely unmarketable video, because the niche fanbase of the show needs someone to talk it up. Even though the people who like the show also liked that video because my arguments were very good, nonetheless, it's not going to get big. People aren't going to share it, right? And it's not going to get algorithmic success. Furthermore, back then I just didn't know how to market shit in general, but it just has no appeal. You have to like the shows that everyone else likes. And in my opinion, that's no way to enjoy anime. Clinically going into each season and finding the shows that it is most advantageous for you to also enjoy, it's a weird mindset to be in, and in my opinion, hampers the enjoyment that you will get from the shows. But also, there's the fact that it's a red ocean. And so, you could also just lose the lottery, or you don't have the longest video out of everyone there, and so the video with the highest average watch time gets big. It's very competitive. And so, on the one hand, right, the one thing I will say about seasonal videos is that they are very easy to produce. Just shit out a video in a week and a half tops, right? That's another thing, you have to make them very quick. You have to just strike while the iron is hot while it's still airing, which is stupid. I hate that you have to do that, but nonetheless, it is the strategy, right? Just strike it while it's hottest. And by doing that, you increase your odds at winning the lottery once again. And so you have to be very competitive, you have to talk about only very specific topics, and it's just not a good time in general. It's very hard to win that lottery, and in my opinion, Anitube is just a losing game, unless you just talk if you don't play it clinically, it is very hard to win the odds. Very, very difficult. Now, you could be thinking, well, okay, You're trying to fight the red ocean. Create the blue ocean. And this is what everyone essentially tells me, all my friends, right? Well, specifically Neon, because this is really about him. they're like, okay, but you had the Call of the Night Monogatari video. And that was my one blue ocean success in Anitube. I'll give you that. That video it's now at 47k views, maxed out at 37k during its initial run. So, not bad views, comparable performance to my most recent video, my VTuber video. So you could be thinking, just do that every time. Now, what made that video special, what made it a blue ocean, is that it was more of a documentary than a review. And it was a documentary about something no one else had talked about in Anitube. So if you wanted to learn about this topic, you had to go to me. You had to learn about the Shaft Exodus from me. And because it is a legitimately interesting story, and because I did have useful insights for Call of the Night, because there was a, review-like section in it, but it was also part of the narrative. That video is one of my best anime videos, if not my best, right? And it's most similar to the type of content I'm making now, which is more documentary-related stuff. So, you could just make anime documentaries, right? Well, first of all, only making anime documentaries, really, I think that's a niche market. You could potentially make a career off of it, but it's a blue ocean, but it's really more of a blue sea or a blue lake. It's very niche. Nonetheless, maybe I could get 50k subs off of it. 100k subs tops, right? That would be, that would be a sizable increase from where I'm at. The thing is, this has to be a career. And pivoting from something that specific is going to be fucking hard, right? Especially if I've already built up an audience off of it. If I've built up those 100k subs and then pivot, people aren't going to stick around, and YouTube's going to know most of your audience isn't watching your current output and is therefore not going to promote it. But nonetheless, it could work out. It could get me a sizable enough audience. It's just that, once again, the ceiling seems low to me at my current standing. I don't think I can become a big enough channel to sustain myself off of those numbers. If I wanted to keep YouTube as a hobby forever, I would go for that potentially, but I want it to be a career. But furthermore, and here's where things get, I think, a bit worse for this outlook. If I'm just gonna make documentaries anyway, why limit myself to Anitube? Didn't think of that, did you? Because really, why would I? Because documentaries can be about all sorts of things, and they still have generally the same appeal of being a story and a narrative that you follow, right? So why stick with that? Which is why I've pivoted away from that, Because, you can create the blue ocean for yourself in Anitube, but at that point, why stay in Anitube? You're needlessly limiting yourself. What it comes down to is that my current audience, or more specifically my Discord server, really wants me to stay in anime. Because they're all anime fans, and Neon doesn't watch any Anitubers, it seems, except me and Best Guy Ever. So by losing that, he's losing basically his last connection to Anitube, because Best Guy Ever never uploads, right? So it's really just me who's uploading once every month or two. Now, the other big argument I get a lot as to why I should stay in Anitube is because, well, you have your current audience, right? You don't want to betray them, your 7,500 subscribers that subscribed for anime. Except I now have 13.8k subs. I'm about to double my numbers. But furthermore, let's say I pivot to anime documentaries. Those people are there for seasonal anime. Literally 4,000... not 4,000. I was about to say 4,000 of 5,000, but that was the year before I made the Dungeon Meshi video, right? So, let's see. I think I was at 5,000 something before the Dungeon Meshi video. It finally got me over 6K. I was at 7.5K by the time I released the Nyan Neko Sugar Girls video. Really, like 1.5K of that is down for anything that isn't seasonal anime. Legitimately. So, if I pivot away from seasonal anime, which is better for my artistic endeavors, and better in general, I think, it's going to give me higher chances of blowing up on YouTube, because it's a less competitive space if I pivot to documentaries, and I'll get more into that in a bit. That sub-base, right? That sub-base that likes seasonal anime really isn't that valuable, because they subbed for the anime. Seasonal anime on YouTube is largely people clicking on videos to confirm that they are right in liking a show. That is what it is. They want to confirm that their current opinions are in fact right, and they want to be given the tools to defend their shows from people who don't necessarily like it as much. Sometimes it is genuine inquiry as to like, maybe this person is going to have an interesting point, but I think that, review content is by and large people confirming their pre-existing opinions, at least in Anitube. And people pretend it's not that, and sometimes it isn't that, but I think it's a lot of that. I really do. That audience isn't that valuable. Also, what fucking audience? 7,500 subs is nothing. I can still, even with double that subs, nearly. I'm like 700 subs away from, I think I did the math wrong, but whatever. A little over 1,000 subs away from doubling that number, right? At 15,000, I will have. Even at that stage, I feel like I could pivot into anything. I really could, because that sub-base isn't valuable. It really isn't. It's fucking piddly shit nothing. So, I am a firm believer in the what audience argument, because you could say, like, oh, well, you betrayed your fans, how could you? Fuck them. I don't care. Like, if I have a creative endeavor that I think is more worth pursuing, and that will give me more money and more longevity, of course I'm gonna fucking take it, right? To me, there's no downside in ditching Anitube. Now, there is the other argument I've heard, which is, well, why not do a little bit of Anitube, a little bit of documentaries, right? Just juggle the two. Which is where we get to the next tenet of YouTube. Consistency. Consistency is king on YouTube. It's why every Chubby Emu video is the same exact video, basically. Except for the story that he tells, the thumbnail is basically the same. The way he tells the story is basically the same. It is a formula. People don't like being challenged when they click on a video, and so when a video starts off very experimentally or delves into it too early, people click off, right? If I'm going to get experimental in a video, which I did in my Nyan Neko Sugar Girls video, I'm going to do it very late in the runtime when people are already invested in the story I'm telling. I am not going to switch things up too early, which is also why I'm trying to form a consistent intro. Both my videos in this new style of internet documentaries start with the phrase, "You may have seen a clip online that goes something like this." And my next two videos that I have planned, one of them starts off with a bit of a different intro, but nonetheless, it's like the same formula of you may have seen a blank that goes something like this, or that looks something like this, or that is something like this, something like that. I plan on doing the same intro for every video I can. Sometimes it won't work out, but generally speaking, I want to standardize that so that, whenever people, get into a video, it's more of a comfortable experience. It's less challenging, it's less new, right? So it's less of a curveball. So let's say I continue doing anime videos while doing the internet documentary videos. How the fuck is that gonna work? Because on the one hand, you have your anime fan base, which I think is not very valuable at all, and they're only here for seasonal videos, and anything that isn't seasonals is going to get 2,000 views unless it's a really specific blue market thing that actually, wins the gamble somehow, which is very unlikely. But if I did, anime documentaries, maybe it could work, right? Something like that. But it's also very risky. Like, I think I overplayed how likely that anime documentary thing is to work. I actually think it's very unlikely, but, nonetheless, right? Let's say I'm doing that. And then on the flip side, you have internet documentaries, which is a completely different fan base from anime stuff or anime review content, right? What the fuck? How's that gonna work? I'm gonna have two entirely different audiences. That is bad for a channel, because if I build up both of those audiences, I now have half of the audience coming for one thing and half of it coming for another. But it's really more like a tiny sliver of the audience is coming for anime reviews, and 90% of it is coming for internet documentaries, because I think that's way more likely to work out. Now, I mentioned anime documentaries, and I kind of mixed things up there a bit, because while I think anime reviews are impossible to do concurrently with internet documentaries and not alienate a big part of my fan base, anime documentaries, I think, could work very occasionally. If they were a minority of my content, that's why I'm not entirely ditching anime, because I do have one idea that probably could work and get views, maybe, later next year, because it has... I think it has appeal and it's going to be timely, but it's also going to be timeless in certain regards. I'm not going to spoil it too much, but it's not impossible to make work if it's a minority of content. But if I keep doing anime reviews, let's say you're subbing just for the internet content, or the internet, mystery rabbit hole documentary style content. What do you do if 2 anime reviews come out in a row? Fucking, you unsubscribe, because I'm not putting out the videos you want often enough. But let's say you come for the anime reviews and I put out too many internet documentaries. Fucking, you'll unsubscribe too. But furthermore, anyone new coming to the channel doesn't know what the fuck my content is, because half of it seems to be for this completely other thing, and then the other half seems to be for the thing you want, but do you really want to wait for half of those uploads to be something that you have zero interest in? Of course you don't. Of course you're just gonna come for the thing you want. If you stratify your audience too much, if you just make them these entirely two different things, you're gonna just blow up your channel. And I don't mean the good kind of blow up, I mean the bad kind where you tank it, and where it gets 0 views and 0 subs, right? But furthermore, once again, red ocean. Anime reviews, unless you somehow create that blue ocean, which has to be very specific, I think anime documentaries are once again the only way that would work out, because I've tried doing anime reviews on things that aren't timely, that aren't seasonals, and they never get views, they never blow up, nobody cares, because those aren't the shows that are in right now. And, maybe if I just spec'd into JoJo's or fucking Dragon Ball, maybe that would work, but I don't have any show like that that's, big enough for me to build an entire channel around, and I wouldn't want to be stuck making videos on just one type of show, or which is one show period, for the rest of my life, right? So, it just doesn't work. It doesn't work playing for both audiences. You have to choose one. And the internet documentary audience is much more valuable. Much more valuable. Multiple times the value of my anime audience. And you may be thinking, well, what the fuck? But internet documentaries are also a red ocean. They aren't. They really aren't. And the reason why is because internet documentaries as a whole, are theoretically an even more competitive field than Anitube. But when you make a documentary on a topic, you have inherently created your own blue ocean, given that it is not talked about by many people. And the perfect example of this is the Nyan Neko Sugar Girls video. Now, on the surface, Nyan Neko Sugar Girls might seem like an outdated, irrelevant red ocean topic, where it's really niche, but there are a million view videos on it already, and, you know, people have said most of the things that there are to say about the Nyan Neko Sugar Girls anime specifically. But I went deep with it. I tunneled down to the very bottom. I figured out everything there is to figure out currently about Nyan Neko Sugar Girls, and in doing so, created a blue ocean for myself, which is why my video outperforms most of the other videos on the topic, because most of the other ones are just silly little reactions, and they all lose to Salty DK Dan's video on it, which has 1 million views. But mine doesn't, because mine doesn't compete with Salty DK Dan's video on it. It's an entirely different audience, an entirely different demographic that I'm pandering to. Now, you could think, well, Crunchy, why not just tunnel down to the very bottom of an anime? Why not make the review on an anime that no one else has made a definitive review on? Maybe. Maybe it could work. No, it's not a 0% chance, but it is still very unlikely in my opinion, because other reviews are still going to be saying very similar things to yours on average, right? You know, and if no one's reviewing the show, it's probably not a very popular show, and the blue ocean is probably a blue fucking puddle. That's the story of my Tomozaki video, my Zaregoto videos. I've made definitive videos on 3 novels of Zaregoto and the entire first season of Tomozaki. No one watched them. Every single time I made a definitive video on a piece of media, it didn't work out. But let's say you do it on something extremely popular. Let's say I make the definitive Dandadan video. Here's the problem with that. To make a definitive video on something, you have to do a lot of research, a lot of work. You have to read from the manga, potentially. Or you watch all 12 episodes of the anime and then compile all your thoughts. By that point, it's already done airing, but then, you know, you really, just make something long and meaty, and it's like a 30-minute analysis, but it's perfectly worded and perfectly edited, and, oh, wait, you didn't strike while the iron was hot now, did you? Uh-oh. You actually missed your best chance to get views on that anime. I stumbled through my sentence there, but you got the point anyway. You missed your big chance to get views. Now, theoretically, you could say, well, it's still blue ocean. It's not. It's not. Because cumulatively, all those videos that struck while the iron was hot said all the things you were probably going to say in your video. And unless it's really research heavy and really says something that nobody else could have said, you haven't actually created a blue ocean. You've just created a slightly less red one. But because it's not topical, it's actually just a fucking pond. You have failed to make a blue ocean. So it doesn't work with that. But it does work with documentaries, because you can, with any topic, you can theoretically tunnel down to the very bottom unless someone else has already done it, right? So anyone else in the future trying to create a Nyan Neko Sugar Girls documentary would probably fucking fail, unless they found something really new to say on it, because I already tunneled all the way down. But let's say you were going to make a video on something. Oh god, I don't want to say anything, because most of the stuff I know is a blue ocean is stuff I'm going to make a video on, right? But you get the point. If something hasn't had a definitive video made on it yet, that is a blue ocean that is ready to be capitalized on. And that's what my current video is, where there are videos, there's always videos on a topic, right? For example, my VTuber video, that I looked up, the internet's most unhinged VTubers on YouTube, and there was a 50k view video on it. But it was all about VTubers who had done, immoral things or were like big into drugs and shit or whatever. Like actually like psychotic people was my understanding of it. I just skimmed through. Whereas mine was, very wholesome by comparison. I talked only about VTubers that I liked, that sort of thing. So in the end, like, it was a slightly less blue ocean, which is probably why it didn't get as many views, on top of it just not having a very good thumbnail, which I'm trying to remedy. You'll see me change the thumbnail here soon. I'm trying out a new strategy for the thumbnail. But the point is, like, that was still a bluer ocean than most of my anime videos. And for my upcoming videos, which are going to come in 2025... those are, relatively blue ocean. I think the biggest videos on the topic I'm going to cover next have like 40k views, and they don't do it nearly as extensively as I'm going to. And they're short little piddly piss videos that, they're gonna fucking, they're just not as good. They're not as good. The other topic that I want to cover after the next one has a 100k view video that I'm theoretically competing with, except that it's like 15 minutes long and only gives a brief overview of the topic, and they're like all my other videos are like that. They're topics that have, maybe one sort of definitive-ish video on it, but that's not as in-depth as I'll go, and it doesn't have that many views anyway, and I could still get a bunch of views off the topic, so it's pretty fresh waters, right? Whereas, let's say I was making a Chris Chan video. God forbid, once again. Red Ocean. Red as fuck ocean. I would get no views off of that. Gino Samuel has said everything I could... that really could possibly be said about Chris Chan at this point. Except for things that happened after. I think, like, his series went up to 2021. I haven't finished it. Like, I'm not even close. But the point is, like, that's a red ocean right there. That is something that I wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole. Onision, forget about it. Anything Frederick Knudsen has made a video on, forget about it. They've made the definitive videos on all these people. But, if I play my cards right, there's plenty of blue oceans out there to swim in and gain an audience in, which just isn't as much the case with anime, where any blue ocean formed in there is not only a struggle because, you're doing a niche within a niche, like it's really hard to get something to spring up from that, but also, like, at that point, why not just make the internet documentary stuff? Because if I'm going to go that niche with anime, to do anime documentaries specifically, once again, why not just do it on everything? Why not just make documentaries in general? Because if I make documentaries in general and build an audience that likes documentaries on anything, so long as it's about, pop culture and internet and stuff like that, which is what I'm currently speccing into, people might be willing to watch an anime documentary. That's my thought process anyway. And I think that checks out a lot more than anything Anitube related. I think at this point, like, the only reason why anyone would want me to stay in Anitube isn't, like, based on what would be logical from a marketing perspective, but just because they want anime content. So yeah. That's my marketing strategy for YouTube for the foreseeable future. There's a lot more I could talk about. There is way more thought that goes into this than you might initially expect. But, nonetheless, like, this is the big thing that I'm thinking about right now as to why Anitube is not worth staying in for the time being. To end off with, Neon BTFO.